Alright, my last vlog I talked about like this microcosmic geopolitical struggle, conflict that's hardwired within Israel. This time I want to talk about the larger geopolitical issue that goes on with Israel, and why the Israelis and Palestinians are basically simply just pawns of greater powers. Always have been. Israel's always been the pawn of greater powers. And the reason why is because the Levant, right there, that eastern border, that eastern coastline of the Mediterranean, is very important geopolitically to have naval domination in the Mediterranean, right? And certainly, you know, this isn't anything new. The Assyrians and the Persians and the Romans and the Macedonians certainly understand this, and later understood this, and later, of course, the Ottomans understood this. And there we come into the modern age. In the early 20th century, Israel is basically a byproduct of a struggle that happened between a regional power, the Ottoman Empire, and a global power, the British Empire. And, you know, the Levant, you know, and, you know, I'll put a map of the Levant. When I'm talking about Levant, I'm basically talking about that entire region that Israel kind of sits smack dab in the middle of, there on the eastern Mediterranean coast, was important because the Suez was important to Israel, because it was a quick trade route to India, you know, Southeast Asia, for England and some of their economic allies in Europe, certainly. So, first of all, England did some pretty fun little strategic move. They allied themselves with Bedouin tribes and Hashemites, and also did a strong push toward Jewish global interests in the region. And while playing them all as allies, and also dealing with some anti-Turkish feelings in the region at the time, the English were able to rip the expansive power of the Ottomans off of the Levant. They were successful in doing that. And when they did that, and when they gained control of the Levant, they sat down with France, and France got Syria and Lebanon, which is now Syria and Lebanon, and England took what is now Palestine and Jordan, knowing that they had to find a home for the Hashemites, the people that legend says are direct descendants of Muhammad. They created Transjordan, and then they also created this area called Palestine, which pretty much looks like modern day Israel on a map. All right. So this was about a chess match. Israel and the Levant. I don't even say Israel, but the Levant has always been played as this wonderful strategic little spot on a big chessboard that we call the globe, right? So, after World War II, the British Empire was basically crippled, and they couldn't hold on to their empire. So the United States and the Soviet Union both backed the founding of an Israeli state, because both of them felt the Levant was important to them geopolitically, but neither was really willing to be decisive or aggressive in taking it. So they both saw Israel as their way of getting in to Israel. The Russians, because of the migration of Russian Jews to Israel, and Eastern European Slavic Jews, you know, more culturally definable, and in ideological manners as well, the Soviet Union thought that Israel would certainly be in their interest, and the United States, because of the enormous economic and you know, even though it was a smaller American Jew migration to Israel, there was quite a bit of financial support from American Jews going to Israel. So the United States thought that they were going to be the influence there in the Levant region. I don't think that either power saw. I'm looking at maps. I don't think that either power saw the situation clearly at all. First of all, I want to say that the ideological foundations of Zionism aren't really what I'm talking about here. I mean, that was more of a propaganda to get Jews that weren't in Israel globally behind the Zionist movement. So, I mean, that was just kind of a propaganda game being played by the great powers that be at the time, the Soviet Union, United States, to create the state of Israel. The migrations, although they're critical, really have nothing to do with the geopolitical aims of the powers that be and the games that were played. So, anyway, I hear it said time and time again, why is that area is so important? There's no oil or anything else, and this is why. Geopolitically, it's important to have naval power in the Eastern Mediterranean, because it's important for not just global trade but regional trade within Europe, which is a combined economic power, and there's lots of oil there too, lots and lots of oil. So you need to get that oil out there real quick, right? So. I've also heard it said on a constant basis that the United States has been this great patron of Israel throughout its entire history, and that's not true at all. The first 20 years, the Soviet Union was the first great patron of Israel. Through Czechoslovakia, they funneled weapons before and after the wars that happened in the 60s between Israel and its Arabic neighbors, and a lot of economic development happened through Czechoslovakia, the proxy of the Soviet Union. France also became a patron of Israel as well, but they lost that like in the late 60s because of French Algerian interests, and the French really just didn't have the power or the economic or military might to really help Israel against the 400 million people or so in the region that wanted them gone. So in 1967, because of American interests, the United States became the strategic partner of Israel, and that's the way it's remained for the last 40 years. The reason that the United States strategically, Israel became important to it is because it wanted to fetter Soviet Union's access to the Mediterranean, if not blockade it completely. That also meant allying itself with Turkey, which put Turkey in a vicarious position, and also shifted Iraq and Syria's alliances toward military alliances with the Soviet Union. And the reason it put Turkey in a vicarious position is because, Syria on one side, and Iraq, from another side, and the Soviet Union from another side decided to attack it. Certainly the outcome would be not good for the Turks. So what the United States did was they distracted Iraq with Iran, and they distracted Syria with Israel, and that's why Israel became in. Syria certainly couldn't take on Israel by itself, especially with the military backing of the United States, and certainly Iraq, couldn't take on Iran with the United States support of the Shah there, and later, even during the Iran-Contra, we were fucking with Iraq, right? So, back in Iraq, fucking Iraq, back in Iraq, fucking Iraq. But, it always makes me laugh when I hear people talk about how Saddam Hussein was this great ally of the United States, when for the most of the Hussein regime it was allied with the Soviet Union. For certain. The reason he had so many Scud missiles in '91, that wasn't American technology. So Israel's reality is one of survival. Its geography will allow it to survive. I mean, even if Egypt and Syria decided to get together, they're not going to be much of a threat on a nuclear capable Israel. But Israel and the Levant, that entire region there, is important. And is important to large global powers. And until a large global power feels the need to have the eastern coast of the Mediterranean again, you're just going to keep on seeing this shit go on and on and on. And even then, you'd probably see it go on and on and on. So it's the perpetual crisis of Jerusalem. And it's perpetuated not even necessarily by Palestinians or Jews, but by the powers that be that want to control those regions. And the United States isn't alone in that chess match. And it really cracks me up. I watch all these idiots on YouTube's like picking sides. And there are no sides. There are no good and bad to geopolitical chess games, people. It's just about economic interests. That's all it is.
This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.